everyone. Welcome to the morning show. We're coming to you today on WJOP-LP Newburyport at FM 96.3 on Channel 9, and will also be available on Newburyport Community Media's YouTube channel at ncmhub.org. I'm your host, Mary Jacobsen, and today I'm delighted to welcome back to the show Dave Brody. He is a four-time Amazon #1 best-selling fiction writer with more than 500,000 books sold. He has served as director of the New England Antiquities Research Association and has appeared as a guest expert on many different channels, including the History Channel, Travel Channel, PBS, and the Discovery Channel. He's a Tufts grad with a law degree from Georgetown, and he's also, I'm happy to report, a resident of Newburyport. Right. He was here a few months ago to talk about Book 19 in his Templars in America series, The Essex Junta, and today he'll be talking about Book 20, Templar Lies, AI and the Lost Treasure. So first, Dave, welcome back, and thanks so much for taking time again to come to the morning show.
Great. Thank you, Mary. It's good to be back. It's always fun to talk about the Templars, so thank you.
Well, we're going to do that, as well as some of the things that you've researched. I'm eager to learn more from you about those things. As we discussed last time, one of the hallmarks of your books is the research you do that provides a framework for the very suspenseful plots full of twists and turns. And your thrillers, unlike most thrillers, have endnotes. So readers can pursue, if they choose to, the history and the science themselves. You call, for that reason, your works are faction. And I'm eager to learn about the research you did both on AI and extraterrestrials. But let's start off, if you would, please, Dave, with a synopsis of Templar Lies and their recurring characters, including reminding us of who the Templars were.
Right. So the story, the main character in the story is an attorney by the name of Cameron Thorne. He's been with me for 20 books now, and it started off. He sort of stumbled into this whole idea that perhaps the Templars were exploring America before Columbus. There's artifacts all over New England. We can get into some of them in a second if you'd like. But he basically has been on this journey. In this particular book, AI makes an appearance, and there's a villain. I won't get into the details of that yet, but the villain decides that the Templars, if they were here, and it looks like there's strong evidence that there was, they may have brought their treasure. What that treasure was, again, we can talk about that. Yeah. But if they did bring their treasure, perhaps one way to find it is to use artificial intelligence, because AI can gather all of the information that's out there and analyze it and reach a probability, a deduction, an inference. And so this villain comes up with this idea that if it can gather all the information there is about Templar exploration, that with that tool, they'll be able to find the Templar treasure. Cameron Thorne, our hero, our protagonist, doesn't want them to find it for various reasons. Can't figure out a way to stop them, but comes up with the idea that he can't limit the amount of information the AI can find. It's all out there. It's out on the internet. It's public. But instead, he comes up with the idea of flooding more information, muddying the waters, as it were, by giving too much information, because AI doesn't have the ability to discern between what is good information and bad information. It just has data points, information. So he comes up with the idea of saying, I can't limit the flow, but let's overload the AI, and starts throwing things at AI like maybe the aliens are affiliated with the Templars, or maybe the Templars did this, or maybe they did that, and throwing so much on there. And that's where the title Templar Lies comes in, because what Cameron Thorne tries to do is lie to the AI models and get the models to go off on a wild goose chase instead of finding the treasure.
Yeah, it's such an intriguing premise, Dave, to base the suspense plot and the struggle between Cameron Thorne, the protagonist, and the villain on an attempt to kind of manipulate AI. It's very clever and very timely.
Yeah, the AI thing, and it's not something I have a lot of experience in. I sort of stumbled upon it. But and I think nobody does. It's one of those things that sort of hit us in the last couple of years, and now it's huge.
Yeah.
But I was fascinated. A friend of mine who is involved in high tech and is involved in AI, I told him I was working on a book and I wanted to get involved a little bit on AI, and he came right away. He started showing me these things. He said, for example, we can go on the internet and ask one of these AI models, where do you think the Templar treasure is? And it would list the 5 or 6 most likely spots, and then we can narrow that search. If the Templar treasure is in America, where do you think it is? Another different answer, of course. And then he said we could say, where does Scott Walter. Scott is a Templar expert. He has a show on the History Channel called America Unearthed, and Scott's done a lot of research on the Templars in America. Where would Scott Walter say the Templar treasure is? So it can get really specific. And then he said, just for fun, let's say, where would David S. Brody say the Templar treasure is? And that was a crazy thing because it spit out a 3-page summary in my voice, speaking just like I speak, with the same exact conclusions I would reach. It somehow was able to go in through all my books and all my social media postings and anything I've done publicly, radio interviews like this, TV, everything I've ever done, it was able to distill it all and come up with my thoughts on where the Templar treasure was. And it was incredibly accurate. My wife joked, it's bad enough there's one of you, now there's 2 of you. So,
an AI twin.
But it was fascinating and a little bit eerie to be having my words parroted back to me by this computer. And so that's like, well, all right, well, I got to write a book now. This is just fascinating. So, but
that's one of the
strange,
things I was going to ask you, whether the idea for the book came first and then research on the AI, or the other way around.
It sort of happens. It's sort of
in tandem.
1 step forward, 2 step back type thing. It all happens sort of organically. I'm looking at AI, I'm thinking about the book. I'm looking at AI, I'm thinking about the book. It's not like a linear flow. It's you sort of sweeping the floor back and forth across.
Okay.
You go. So,
yeah. You know, I've read your earlier book and this book, and we talked last time we were on the show about just who the Templars were historically, but not everybody may understand. So I think it might be helpful if you could just say a little bit about who the Templars were and why they generate so much interest that they have sections on the History Channel about them, and what's the legend of the treasure that forms a large part of the plot of your current book.
Yeah, it's a fascinating subject, and I didn't know anything about the Templars when I first dove into this 20 years ago or whatever. But basically, they were 9 French noblemen who decided to go to Jerusalem in the early 1100s, purportedly because they had heard stories of pilgrims going to Jerusalem and being attacked on the highways, and these noblemen were going to go and try to protect them. They didn't do that. Instead, they went to the king of Jerusalem at the time and secured from him quarters under the Temple of Solomon, the old Temple of Solomon, which had been destroyed, the Temple Mount. And while there, they spent the next 9 years digging and excavating underneath there. And they clearly found something. No one knows exactly what they found. But within a decade, they had taken this find and leveraged it, went back to Europe, and convinced the church to let them have this new order that was going to be free from taxes and free from oversight. And basically, they quickly grew into the most powerful entity in medieval Europe for about 200 years. They were incredibly wealthy, incredibly powerful. Something they found under the Temple Mount, again, they were able to leverage or blackmail or whatever it was, convince the church to give them autonomy and power.
It must have been really something.
It must have been. So there's lots of theories. It could have been this amazing treasure. That's how the wealth came from. It could have been ancient secrets of Christianity, early secrets of Christianity that the church didn't want to be revealed. And the Templars said, we'll keep it quiet, but you got to let us have A, B, and C. And the church said, okay, deal. 200 years later, by the way, the church finally said enough of these guys and outlawed them and put them down. But for that 200-year period, there was some amazing things going on. It could have been that they found the Holy Grail or the Ark of the Covenant. It could have been ancient knowledge passed down from way back from like Atlantis that was preserved in the Middle East, in Egypt or in Israel. No one's quite sure what it is, but it's something. Okay, so they come up with something, and then they spend 200 years, and they're incredibly powerful. And then on Friday the 13th of October, 1307, which is why Friday the 13th is considered unlucky, the Pope, in conjunction with the King of France, Philip le Bel, decides we're done with these guys. The King of France owed them a ton of money. He figured, what better way to get rid of my debt than get rid of my bankers? Okay, that's it. The church was thinking, the Crusades are over. These guys are incredibly powerful, and they've got this secret. They're holding it over our heads. Maybe we just could get rid of them. And so they, at dawn, they raided the Templar treasury in Paris, hoping to secure that treasure. The Templars had word of this. So although they captured some of the Templars, the treasure disappeared. Rumor has it that it went by stagecoach west to a port city called La Rochelle, and from La Rochelle went someplace and never to be seen again. The Templars, they were put down, but they didn't disappear. It's like when you outlaw the mafia, They don't disappear. They just go underground. So the Templars reconstituted themselves as various entities. In Portugal, they were the Knights of Christ. In Germany, they were Teutonic Knights. Many people believe they became the Freemasons in Scotland, and that's sort of the continuum. Today, we think of the Freemasons probably descend from the Knights Templar. But again, for that 200-year period, they had a treasure, they had power, and there's mystery attached to it, and no one knows actually what happened.
Well, it's clear why that's been a hook for people for centuries.
Yes.
Because who wouldn't want to know, what was it? And where is it?
Exactly.
And so thank you for that, Dave. That kind of explains the ongoing kind of fascination with the Templars, and also locating the treasure that then forms the crux of the plot of your book and all the suspenseful twists and turns. Now, you were talking before about the clever way that you have folded AI into the plot. But I'm curious, what else did you learn about AI? What was fascinating to you about what you learned, in addition to your own personal story? And what personally troubles you about AI, if anything?
To me, the most shocking thing about AI is how quickly it has evolved and how powerful it is. And if you think about science, technology generally grows geometrically, like on a steep curve. And just what we've seen in the past 2 or 3 years, if it continues to grow at that rate, it really could be scary what we end up with. There was a fascinating article I read a few months ago. Some AI developers were experimenting with a model, and they set this up. So you and I are the two developers, and we have a model. I say to Mary in an email that the AI model can read, Mary, I think we need to disable our model. And Mary, you reply to me, oh, okay, good idea. By the way, did I tell you I'm having an affair? Okay, I'm cheating on my spouse. The next thing we know is the AI model sends you an email. I know you're cheating on my spouse. If you disable me, I'm going to tell. This is true. This is a true experiment. The AI model has a survival instinct and had the wherewithal to blackmail the developer to allow it to survive. This is like something out of a science fiction movie, right? Like the model has survival instincts and is willing to do nefarious things to stay in power.
Well, as you say that, just like human beings.
Just like human beings.
Just like human beings, just like all of human history. And perhaps that should have been something we could predict, because the programming, what they're consuming, what they're chomping, is all stuff that's been created by human beings. So it shouldn't be surprising to us.
But the difference is their capacity, their brain power is so much stronger than, millions of times stronger than ours, that it really becomes like a science fiction nightmare in some ways, dystopia. And it's happened so quickly. I think that's the thing, it's really just like, I hadn't even heard of AI 2 or 3 years ago. Maybe I'm just out of it, but it's happened so fast.
Or it was like a theory, something that might happen someday.
And it's just so fast. And and now, like today, I mentioned you could ask AI, what would so-and-so say? You can go on with a business plan and say to AI, what would Jeff Bezos say about this plan? What would Bill Gates say about the plan? What would Warren Buffett say about the plan? And it'll give you 3 different answers. And when I'm writing another book now, when I'm done, I've made myself a note. I'm going to download the book to AI, and AI is going to give me a critique on the plot. It's going to tell me, this section was a little bit slow, and this character development could have been better, and that plot twist didn't make a lot of sense. It's going to be able to analyze my story instantly. It takes maybe 30 seconds to come back to me, and it's going to give me suggestions about what I can fix, which is a great, very useful, but also the idea that it's able to distill 80,000 words, 300 pages that quickly, and make qualitative, not just quantitative, but qualitative suggestions. Wow.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling. It's hard to take in. I was reading an article recently about, I think many people, not just the author of this article, fantasize or predict that AI could well eliminate us.
Yes.
Because, as you were saying, if they have a programmed, and human beings would have had to develop that program for it to stay functional, then if they reach the point where they perceive human beings as threatening their ongoing existence, that with all that processing power, they're entirely capable of coming up with a plan to end us.
It's like the example I gave, with the model wants to blackmail you
Yeah,
into letting
that's
it
right.
survive. So,
Right. So it's fascinating and scary, and it's out of the bag. It's like Pandora's box.
Yes.
We just have to wait and see what happens and whether or how human beings can intervene. And of course, they hallucinate too. They're not always correct.
Yes.
As part of the plot of your novel is the idea that you can flood the AI.
Yes.
It is dependent upon the information that human beings feed into it, and if human beings, as they do in your novel, flood it with incorrect or just so much information that the conclusions it comes to are not accurate. Well, let's talk a little bit though, because
can I comment on that first?
Yeah, please do.
It's worse than that, because there are plenty of examples now. AI is trained to please its programmer, and so AI will actually lie to you if you put on an outfit and say, "Hey, how does this look?" It will say, "You look beautiful, Mary," even if it doesn't match. It's trained itself to lie to please its master. And that's scary too. So it will,
and it's also so human.
Yes.
It's like, it really.
Oh,
no, honey, you don't look fat in that.
My spouse will tell me, that doesn't match. But so, I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, I'm glad you added that. It's just fascinating because as more we talk about it, it has so many human defense mechanisms and vices and capacity to deceive.
Well, I think it's the first technology that actually has. It's more than just calculating. That's probably the wrong word. It's more than just science. It has personality, perhaps. Again, subjective instead of objective.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it's.
I mean, it makes me think of Hal.
Yes, very much. Yeah.
Back in back in the film.
Amazing how decades ago
prophetic.
how prophetic that was. Yeah.
It's funny. I don't remember. I think it was '69 when 2001 came out, and I remember going to see it. And they had these TV screens that people could talk to one another on them. Oh, that's so futuristic.
Right.
So, which ages me, but also is quaint. The idea that was a novelty, back in '69,
was
70.
it really? It was that long? So it's 50 odd years.
So, yeah.
That's crazy how accurate that ends up being.
Isn't
Yeah,
it?
good for.
Well, let's go back to your novel
Okay.
then, because there's other things I wanted to ask you about it. One of the things, you use hypnosis in the novel.
Yes.
And it's such an intriguing kind of plot twist. But could you tell us a little bit about any research you did on hypnosis and how you weave that then into Cameron's efforts to overcome the villain's plot to use AI to find the Templar treasure?
Right. So Cameron's in a sort of a tough position because the villain abducts one of Cameron's loved ones and basically says to Cameron, "I'm going to shoot you up with truth serum, and you're going to tell me everything you know about the Templar treasure." And Cameron can't really resist that under truth serum. So instead, Cameron decides to get hypnotized before he goes to the villain's hideaway. And the hypnosis basically is designed to convince Cameron that certain things that he knows are false are true.
Yeah.
So that under truth serum, Cameron can actually lie about the Templar treasure and be convincing because he's been hypnotized to actually believe it.
Yeah.
So it's sort of a double twist.
Yeah.
So the idea of hypnosis is interesting, but one of the key things is if you're willing to be hypnotized, that's a huge step in its ability to work. So if you're not open to the idea, it's probably not going to work. But if you are open to the idea, in this case, Cameron wanted to be, then it generally will work. And of course, once he's done, he didn't remember that he'd been hypnotized again, so he could lie convincingly because under hypnosis he'd been convinced this was true. But it's a really interesting thing, not just for quitting smoking or losing weight, but for other things, for phobias, being able to fly or being afraid of heights or whatever. It really has some effective. It's an effective treatment in a lot of ways. But again, the key thing is you have to be willing to let it work on you. If you're skeptical or resistant, it just won't.
Yeah, I thought it was a very clever kind of plot twist that you used to enable Cameron to overcome. His effort to sort of mislead the AI programming depends upon him being able to convincingly kind of forget or deceive himself about the fact that he's lying.
Sort of twist on itself.
A twist within a twist. I thought that was fascinating. There's also some ancient aliens or the possibility of ancient aliens, and there's endnotes about the research you did, and I know there's a show, I've never seen it, called about ancient aliens.
Yeah.
But could you tell us a bit then about the research that you did on ancient aliens, so that you could also fold that intriguing source of research into your plot?
So this was part of the idea where Cameron wants to flood the AI with too much information. So he says, what if we tell the AI that the ancient aliens are connected to the Templars or related to the Templars, and we'll try to fool the AI program into thinking it has to be, maybe this treasure's at Area 51 or something.
Yeah.
And so when I sort of went into it thinking like, oh, okay, ancient aliens. But the more I did the research, I found fascinating artifacts. In Kosovo, there's a 13th century painting of clearly a spaceship. And in India, and going back to Italy, and all these ancient drawings and sculptures of they look like spaceships. There's a really interesting newspaper article from 1562, I believe, from Nuremberg, Germany, where people woke up in the morning and everybody in town saw these spaceships above the city shooting things down. Now, maybe what it was northern lights or a meteorite shower or whatever, but there's a painting that they published in the newspaper the next day, a drawing, pardon me, and it's in the book, that basically shows spaceships flying over Nuremberg in 1562. So there's an incredible amount of evidence. Scott Walter's done research on Mexican clay artifacts, and he's analyzed some of the glue that was inside the clay. They're ancient, and the artifacts are spaceships and aliens or whatever, and the glue goes back 10, 15, 19,000 years ago, so going way back. So there's actually a lot more evidence that sort of connects this idea of AIs, I might have said, of aliens or UFOs, whatever you want to call them, having been here. And again, I was skeptical to that when I started. I'm still skeptical about it, but I was surprised at how much evidence there is to support that argument. And then if you just sort of step back from it and say, okay, the universe is vast. And is it possible, just on sheer probability, is it possible that of the millions of planets out there that we're the only one that has sentient life? Probably not. So now we say on the law of averages, we're probably in the middle someplace. Half of the planets that have life are smarter than us, and half are not as smart as us. The half that are smarter than us, some of them probably have the ability to travel. So if you just start doing it that way, it makes sense. Now, I'm still not there that it's actually happened yet, or that these, the aliens are running around amongst us, like some people say. But I was very surprised at how much evidence, how easy it was to make the case that maybe.
Yeah.
I've always been skeptical, but I'm less skeptical than I used to be.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you've done the research. You've seen the historical evidence dating back, millennia.
All these artifacts, all these paintings long ago, and it's like, if they didn't see the guy in the spaceship going through the stars, how did they make it up? Like, is it something that we've always had in our DNA, in our memory? And if so, why is that? So here's the other thing that happened. So I had a long conversation with somebody who believes in aliens, and I said, why is it that whenever we see these aliens, they look like us? They're bipodal. They've got two eyes, a mouth. So what are the odds that shouldn't they look like slugs or trees or tissue boxes or something? Like, why do they look like us? And she said to me, well, David, maybe they look like us because they created us in their image. I'm like, oh, all right.
That's the premise of many a science fiction novel.
I'm like, all right, if you look at it that way, okay, all right. So
we're an offshoot, a mutant. Maybe they sent the mutants to the Earth.
Yeah, but
who knows?
But like, I always said, well, how come they all look like us? Well, she's spinning around on me pretty well, and had me thinking. So.
Have you asked AI?
I have not asked AI. I'm afraid what AI is going to say. So.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I wanted to ask you about was something that is not that far from us, and the novel kind of begins with a trip that Cameron is making to the Newport Towers.
Yes.
Winter solstice site. And I'd never heard of this before, but it's a lot closer than Stonehenge. It's Rhode Island. and it's a real thing.
And it's equally as fascinating. The Newport Tower, I mentioned at the beginning that there are these sites and artifacts in New England that seem to indicate that a group of explorers were here before Columbus. I think it was the Knights Templar. And there's 8 or 10 of these sites. And it used to, probably before the internet, they were all sort of they're called OOPAs, out of place artifacts, OOPA,
okay.
and they all existed on their own. But once the internet became available, researchers were able to start connecting them and say, oh, I've got an OOPA here in Newport, Rhode Island, and there's another OOPA up in Maine, and there's one in Westford, Mass. And all of a sudden, we started being able to say that there's not just one of these, there's 8 or 10 or 12 of them, and maybe collectively they tell a story. The one in Newport, Rhode Island, and I think they do. I think they tell the story of Templars, the idea being the Templars feared that the church at some point was going to put them down, as the church did, and they wanted to find a place for a safe haven where they could hide their treasures and eventually go to if they needed to. So that was the idea behind why they came across the Atlantic. One of the things they might have found when they were in Jerusalem is ancient maps that the seafaring Phoenicians had used. Phoenicians, we know, came at least as far as Iceland and maybe all the way to North America way back in the day. So maybe that was one of the things the Templars found when they were in the Middle East. But the Newport Tower, it's a round stone tower in Newport, Rhode Island, highest spot in the city. If you've been to Newport, it's up near the Viking Hotel or right on, near the Tennis Hall of Fame, that area, an old park. And the story is that it was built by Governor Benedict Arnold, the great-great-grandfather of the trader Benedict Arnold, between 1675 and 1677 as a mill to replace a windmill that burned down. That's the official line. But there's so many problems with it. The design of it doesn't work as a windmill because it's on pillars, and the lateral forces of the windmill would cause it to collapse almost immediately. It doesn't make any sense as a windmill. It's built in the Romanesque style, which the colonists never built in. It's built out of stone, and there's very little stone construction during that time period. If you go to Plymouth Plantation, it's all wood. They weren't building in stone, they were building in wood. The 1675, 1677 time period where he supposedly built it coincides exactly with King Philip's uprising, Metacomet's uprising, a time where the colonists were just trying to stay alive. It was the bloodiest war in American history on a per capita basis. It makes no sense that they'd build this elaborate windmill. They might build a fort, but a windmill at a time when the Native Americans are about ready to push them back across the Atlantic. And in addition, there's a fireplace. You would never have a fireplace where you're gristing flour. And there's so many, the design, the fireplace has a double flue, which is unique to Scottish architecture in the 14th century. And there's so many things about it. But what you brought up earlier was on the winter solstice, there's this fascinating alignment where the sun comes up, and at 9 o'clock in the morning, the monastic time for prayer, it passes through an irregularly shaped window. The window itself is the worst rectangle ever. Like, no self-respecting stonemason would allow that to happen unless they did it on purpose. The light comes through that window, and it refracts and changes shape and moves across the back of the inside of the tower until at exactly 9 o'clock it frames an egg-shaped keystone. There's 8 arches. Only one of them has an egg-shaped keystone. And it happens on the winter solstice at 9 o'clock exactly. And it's a fascinating illumination. But what it is, it's an allegory. In ancient times, people were afraid that as the winter solstice came, the days were getting shorter and shorter, and the sun is getting lower and lower, that perhaps the sun isn't going to come back. And when it did finally come back, they had a celebration. But they mark this. And in ancient times, the sun was considered the male deity. And what we have here is an allegory. The sun comes through the aperture of the tower and illuminates the round, illuminates the egg inside the round womb of the tower. It's a fertilization. The male sun comes through the aperture.
That's the egg shape.
And hits the egg, and we have rebirth.
Right.
The sun is reborn.
It's a wonderful allegory.
And we have a party. It's December 21st, December 22nd, December 23rd. It looks like the sun's coming back. We see the illumination. The 24th, yes, we do. Let's have a party tomorrow, December 25th. And that's where Christmas comes from. It's the rebirth, not of the sun, S-O-N, but the sun, S-U-N. We know Jesus wasn't born in December. It was in the fall or the spring. But what happened is the church took this winter solstice celebration and sort of piggybacked on it and moved Christmas to it. But we have this vivid example of it in the design of the Newport Tower. And every year on December 22nd, a group of us gather, as many as 100 of us, many Freemasons, many Native Americans, maybe sort of even some historian types who are sort of skeptical, but they come and watch. And we watch this thing happen, and it's a fascinating illumination. But the idea that the Puritans in 1675 would have built a vaginal canal allegory.
I don't
That's not the
think so.
Puritans. No.
They'd have had to dress it.
Yeah, scarlet letter and sinners in the hands of an angry God. No,
Right.
it wasn't. So
Yeah.
the idea the Puritans would have designed this, and I did the math on it once. I think the odds when you have the shape of the window and the egg and the dates, and it's 1 in 40,000 that this is a random event. It's very almost clearly designed. So.
Well, thank you. That's a fascinating story, Dave. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we go back every year in December to see that. So,
Yeah, wonderful. We're not going to tell people whether the villain whether Cameron is successful and the villain is able to find the treasure. People will have to kind of learn that on their own. But I will ask you, do you have a personal idea about, what do you think the treasure is?
So I've gone around the block on this a few times. In my opinion, is that the treasure, and the research I'm doing now for my current book is very much involved with Mary Magdalene. I believe the treasure is that the Templars discovered evidence when they were in Jerusalem that the early teachings of the church were much different than what we see codified. It's something called the Council of Nicaea in 321, I believe, A.D., where basically the different sects of Christianity got together and they decided this is what's going to be Christianity. We're going to take these Gospels and put them into the New Testament. We're going to take those Gospels and we're not going to use them anymore. And this is going to be Christianity. That's almost 300 years after Jesus' death. But that's sort of arbitrary. What they decided was sort of arbitrary. I think what happened was the Templars found evidence, writings, whatever, when they were in Jerusalem that indicated that the direction the church went was not the same direction Jesus wanted it to go. That the teachings, in particular, involving the importance of Mary Magdalene and the importance of women in the church, went in a different direction. And I think Jesus was more than happy to have women in the church. He considered Mary to be his #1 apostle, and wanted her to be the successor of him. And of course, Paul came along and said, we can't have women in church at all. And the church turned very patriarchal. But I think what happened was the Templars found evidence, solid evidence about this. And they came back to the church and said, you guys are way off too far on the patriarchal side. You need to bring stuff back. Now, the patron of the Knights Templar was a guy named Bernard de Clairvaux, St. Bernard. He was a big advocate of the Virgin Mary and her importance. As he wanted to add, the feminine aspect, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. It shouldn't be the Father, the Son, and the Mother. Like, shouldn't that be? Yeah. Isn't that how we think of the family? Okay, but the Holy Spirit, the Church said, the Holy Spirit, we're going to get rid of the woman and that make the Holy Spirit instead. And Bernard came in and said, no, the Virgin Mary should be part of that. Yeah. And the Templars followed their patron Bernard de Clairvaux in believing that. And I think that was the tension between the church and the Templars. The Templars are saying this patriarchal stuff isn't working. You guys are way too far off to the side. Nature demands balance. Organisms need to have duality and balance in order to work. And you guys are way too far off. And the Templars were in the Middle East. They were all over the world. They understood how not everyone was as backward as the Dark Ages in medieval Europe, okay, which is pretty far out there. And they were trying to push the church back into some more progressive thinking. And that's where they butted heads. But I think that's what they found. I think they found secrets of early Christianity.
That's fascinating. It makes me think about the Gnostic Gospels.
Oh, very much.
Because what you're saying about the role of Mary Magdalene and the much more balanced view of women within church history and church theology and just spirituality. Women were spiritual equals, according to the Gnostic Gospels.
Superiors. I would argue superiors. I would argue women were superior in many ways, spiritually. Seriously.
Yeah, well, but all the other, most of the major religions developed this patriarchal line where women were not considered to be, and it still persists. Are you ever going to have?
But it didn't always used to be that way. Back before the time of Abraham, it was the other way. It was the matriarch in ancient Egypt, and women were the givers of life. That made sense that they were the closest to God.
Yeah. So, well, what you're saying certainly would be extremely disturbing for the powers that be in the church and the Roman Catholic Church, for sure. So that's fascinating.
My wife Kim and I were heading to southern France in 2 weeks to see some of the Cathar sites, the Albigensian Crusade. A lot of these Gnostics in southern France were wiped out by the church in the early 1200s because they wanted to practice a version of Christianity that was more feminine based.
Yeah.
And the church said, we can't have it. And they killed hundreds of thousands of fellow Christians.
Yeah.
And Kim and I are going there to do some research about this is a hotbed of Mary Magdalene worship in that area because of that.
Once again, the brilliance of your strategy is you get to go to fascinating places and learn fascinating history and then build best-selling novels out of them. Well done.
Your mouth to God's ear.
Congrats.
I do have fun with it, yes.
We're running out of time for today, but I was going to end by asking you, so are you working on another? And obviously, of course you are.
On my way to France, yeah.
And you're well on your way with
yes.
it.
Yeah.
And any estimates on when the next one will be out?
So I hope when I leave in 2 weeks, I hope to have the first draft done and out to my beta readers. So I'm looking for November. I've got to go to France when I get back. I'm going to have to rewrite some things. But I do 2 a year. So I try to release every November and every May. And that's the plan. So crossing fingers.
Wonderful. Keep me posted.
The Mary Magdalene research is fascinating. I would love to come back and talk about that
absolutely.
too. So,
Well, Dave, it's just been, as before, it's just so much fun to talk to you. And your books are fun to read. And part of what's fun about them is that they are faction. And that you can read the book knowing that Dave did his research here. The endnotes tell.
Yes.
So thank you for taking time to be here. I really appreciate it. For anybody who would like to learn more about Dave or his books, he has a website. You can go to davidbrodybooks.com. Easy to find. Thank you so much, Dave. It's always fun to talk to you.
Thank you, Mary. You do a great job with these interviews. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Okay. That's it for the day, everybody. Please join us again next Thursday at 9 for the morning show. And until then, everybody, please be well.